Before we start, I want to say that only 1% of you are subscribed. Please subscribe because when we reach 1,000 subscribers, I will post a special video for you. Jason stepped off the shuttle with a mix of excitement and nerves. The Galactic Academy, with its sprawling campus and towering buildings, looked more like a city than a school. Students of various species bustled around, each moving with a purpose. He adjusted his bag over his shoulder and took a deep breath, steeling himself for the first day. As he walked towards the main hall, he noticed another human, Mark, a few steps ahead. "Hey, are you here for the tactical strategy program too?" Jason called out. Mark turned, a look of relief crossing his face when he saw Jason. "Yeah, I am. Thought I was the only human." "I'm Mark," he said, extending his hand. "Jason," he replied, shaking Mark's hand. They walked together, talking about what had drawn them to this prestigious yet daunting program. Inside the main hall, an orientation session was about to start. The room buzzed with alien languages and the hum of translating devices. They found seats next to an imposing figure who introduced himself as Tharok, a Tarkin from the warrior planet of Kravos. "Human strategy is quite direct, isn't it?" Tharok's deep voice rumbled, his translator barely keeping up with his guttural tones. "It can be," Jason admitted, "but there's a lot of nuance to it, which I guess we'll be diving into here." The orientation leader, a tall, slender Navari named Professor Lyrene, stepped onto the stage. Her voice was calm and carried across the hall effortlessly. "Welcome to the Galactic Academy's Tactical Strategy Program. You are here because you are the best of your worlds, but here, you will learn from each other, push your limits, and develop strategies that could change the universe." As the crowd clapped, a small, jittery figure beside Jason murmured nervously. He was a Vixel named Eeply, his large eyes darting around. "I've read about human strategies," Eeply squeaked. "Very straightforward but effective. I'm a bit worried about keeping up." "Don't worry, Eeply," Jason reassured. "We're all here to learn from each other. What's considered straightforward on Earth might be complex here, or vice versa." The orientation moved into more detailed explanations about the curriculum, professors, and expectations. After the formalities, the students were guided on a tour of the campus. Mark leaned over to Jason as they walked. "Think we can make a study group? Looks like we might need all the help we can get." "That's a good idea," Jason nodded. "Tharok, Eeply, you guys in?" "Count me in," Tharok responded with a grin, while Eeply nodded enthusiastically. Their first stop was the simulation labs, where students could practice real-world scenarios and apply theoretical knowledge. "You'll spend many hours here," the guide, a robotic assistant, explained, gesturing to the rows of high-tech equipment. As the day wound down, the group felt a mix of fatigue and exhilaration. They had met their main professors, seen the extensive resources of the academy, and gotten to know a few classmates. As they headed towards the dormitories, Jason felt a genuine sense of camaraderie building. "First day down," he said to the group. "How about we grab some dinner and start figuring out this whole studying thing?" "Sounds like a plan," Mark agreed, and the others murmured their assent. The day had started with Jason feeling out of his depth, but as he walked with his new friends, he felt a growing confidence. Here at the Galactic Academy, amidst a sea of unfamiliar faces and customs, he could find his place and maybe make a difference. Jason, Mark, Tharok, and Eeply sat together in the bustling cafeteria, their trays filled with an assortment of galactic cuisine. The diversity of food was a good metaphor for their class, varied, colorful, and a little intimidating. "Have you guys looked at the syllabus for next week?" Mark asked, poking at a gelatinous cube that wobbled enticingly on his plate. Tharok chuckled, his voice deep and resonant. "I glanced at it. We're starting with non-linear combat strategies from the Zalthar Rift Wars. It doesn't sound particularly human-friendly." Jason forked a piece of something that looked semi-edible. "I read about those. The strategies involve a lot of deception and environmental manipulation. It's pretty complex." Eeply nodded, his eyes wide. "Vixel strategies are more about adaptation and rapid response rather than deception. I'm curious to see how these theories will mesh with my background." The conversation shifted towards their upcoming practical session. We should try to apply each of our strengths to the simulation, Jason suggested. They're okay. Your people are known for their tactical assaults. Eeply, you're good with quick adaptations, and Mark, you've got a knack for predicting enemy movements. Mark grinned. Sounds like a plan. But let's make sure we're also understanding the core of these alien strategies, not just adapting them to what we're comfortable with. Their discussion was interrupted by another human, Lucas, who approached their table with a hesitant look. Hey guys, mind if I join you? I'm trying to form a study group. Sure, Lucas, have a seat, Jason invited. Making room. We were just discussing how to blend our various tactical approaches for the upcoming simulations. Lucas sat down, his relief evident. I heard about your group. I'm pretty good with historical tactics and how they influence modern strategies. Maybe I can add some perspective? Absolutely, Tharok agreed. The more views, the better. As lunch wrapped up, they headed to their first joint session in the strategy lab. The lab was a massive room lined with terminals and holographic displays. Today, they were to analyze a failed military campaign from an alien perspective and suggest alternate strategies. Jason and his team gathered around a terminal, reviewing the details of the campaign. The original commanders had failed to consider the planet's severe weather patterns, leading to a disastrous loss. Okay, so what if they had launched smaller, more mobile units instead of the large battalions? Jason proposed, zooming in on the map displayed on the screen. Lucas nodded, tapping at the terminal. And if they had integrated weather prediction into their strategy, they could have avoided the worst of the storms. It's similar to ancient Earth strategies during the Napoleonic Wars. Eeply quickly simulated their suggestions, and the outcome was significantly better. It's working. The smaller units are more adaptable to the changing conditions. Mark watched the simulation progress. It's about using the environment to your advantage, something that's often overlooked in standard teachings. The professor, an elderly Grand named Dr. Pelix, observed their work. Very innovative, he murmured, making notes on his pad. As the session ended, the group felt a collective sense of achievement. They had managed to turn a theoretical loss into a victory using a blend of their diverse backgrounds. Walking back to the dorms, Tharok clapped Jason on the back. See? What did I tell you? When we work together, we're unstoppable. Jason smiled, feeling more connected to his classmates than ever before. Let's keep this momentum going. Tomorrow, we tackle the Delvian standoff. Read up tonight. They all agreed, eager to see what they could accomplish next with their combined strengths and newfound camaraderie. The study group convened in a quiet corner of the library, surrounded by datapads and holographic displays. Jason, Mark, Tharok, Eeply, and Lucas had been poring over the historical context of the Delvian standoff, trying to uncover unconventional strategies that could be applied. So, the main issue with the Delvian approach was their rigid command structure, right? Mark asked, tapping notes into his datapad. Exactly, Lucas responded, scrolling through a detailed timeline of the standoff. They were too slow to adapt, which gave their adversaries a significant advantage. Tharok leaned forward, his keen eyes analyzing a 3D map of the terrain. If we apply a decentralized command system, it could allow for quicker responses and less predictable movements. Jason nodded thoughtfully. It's like guerrilla warfare on Earth. Small, mobile units that can operate independently but cohesively. Eeply, who had been quietly observing the data, chimed in. And if we integrate real-time environmental scanning into their equipment, they could use the terrain to their advantage more effectively. The group agreed to simulate these strategies the next day. As they packed up their materials, Jason proposed an additional evening session to refine their ideas. Let's meet in the simulation lab after dinner, he suggested. We can run some preliminary tests and adjust our plan based on the results. That evening, the group was huddled around a simulation terminal, inputting parameters and watching as digital battalions maneuvered across rugged landscapes. Lucas pointed to a cluster of units on the display. See how they're getting bottlenecked at the valley? What if we set up drone scouts to provide real-time updates on enemy positions? Tharok quickly programmed the drones into the simulation. Adding drones now. Let's see how this plays out. The results were impressive. The drones provided the necessary intelligence to avoid traps and exploit weaknesses in the enemy's defense. Mark, always keen on ensuring they covered all bases, raised another point. We should also consider communication security. If the enemy intercepts our plans, it doesn't matter how good our strategy is. Epley, expert in electronic warfare, suggested, I can develop a subroutine for encrypted communications. It will randomize signals so they're harder to decode. The group worked late into the night, each member contributing their expertise. The collaboration was intense but exhilarating. As they wrapped up, Jason looked around at his teammates, feeling a profound sense of pride and connection. We've got something really good here, he said. Let's present this to Dr. Pelix tomorrow. I think he'll be impressed. The next morning, the group presented their comprehensive plan to Dr. Pelix. The old Gran listened intently, nodding along and occasionally interjecting with probing questions. After their presentation, Dr. Pelix leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers. I must say, this is one of the most innovative approaches I've seen in my years teaching at the academy. Well done. The praise from Dr. Pelix buoyed the group's spirits as they discussed their next steps. We should document our process, Daroke suggested. It could be valuable for future classes, and I think we could even submit this to the Academy's Strategic Review Journal. Everyone agreed, excited about the idea of contributing something meaningful to the broader academic community. As they left the classroom, Mark clapped Jason on the shoulder. Who knew we'd make such a great team, huh? Jason grinned, looking around at his friends. Yeah, who knew? Let's keep pushing the limits. Who knows what else we can achieve together? With newfound confidence and a strong sense of unity, the group looked forward to tackling even more complex challenges, ready to face whatever the program threw at them next. The group's successful presentation had marked them as top contenders within the tactical strategy program. Their next challenge involved not just strategic maneuvers, but integrating psychological operations and diplomacy into their plans. It was a multifaceted approach that required deep understanding and innovative thinking. As they gathered in the library, Jason introduced the new topic. Today, we need to factor in the psychological impact of our strategies. It's about understanding the enemy's mindset and manipulating it to our advantage. Mark nodded, deeply engrossed in a text about psychological warfare. It says here that fear, uncertainty, and doubt are powerful tools. If we can make the enemy second-guess their own tactics, we've won half the battle. Daroke, who had been studying historical diplomatic maneuvers, looked up from his datapad. We should also consider offering false avenues of peace or retreat to create a sense of security before we strike. Lucas chimed in, excited by the depth of the discussion. What if we use decoys as a part of our strategy? Like projecting images of large forces that don't actually exist to mislead and intimidate? Epley, ever the technician, was quick to respond. I can program holograms for that. It'd be a good test of their scanners and ours. The group agreed to test these ideas in the simulator. They decided to meet later at the simulation lab to set up their scenario, which would now include psychological elements and diplomatic feints alongside their military maneuvers. Later that evening, in the simulation lab, the team worked together to input their complex strategy into the system. Jason oversaw the integration of the psychological operations, ensuring they were seamlessly woven into the military tactics. As they activated the simulation, the room filled with the light of the holograms and the hum of the machines. The digital battlefield came to life, showcasing their strategy in real time. Mark pointed to a section of the map where their decoys were in play. Look, the enemy's diverting their forces to intercept our fake units. That's splitting their defense. Daroke observed the enemy's reactions to their diplomatic feints. Their hesitation is obvious. They're considering the peace offer, which is pulling some of their leaders into debate instead of action. Epley monitored the technical aspects, ensuring all holograms and encrypted communications ran smoothly. All systems are functioning within optimal parameters. The decoys are holding up. Lucas, meanwhile, documented every step and result, preparing their report. This is going to be invaluable for our final project. We're not just showing that we can fight. We're proving we can think, manipulate, and adapt. The simulation ran its course, and the results were beyond satisfactory. The enemy forces were completely outmaneuvered, falling for each psychological trick and diplomatic trap they had set. Pleased with their success, the group gathered to discuss the outcomes and what improvements could still be made. Jason led the discussion, focusing on refining their tactics further. Next time, we could integrate real-time decision-making AI to adjust our psychological tactics on the fly, Jason suggested. That's a good point, Tharoke agreed. Adaptability could be our greatest strength, especially in unpredictable field conditions. Epley was already on it. I'll start working on an AI prototype. It'll learn from each simulation and adjust accordingly. As the night drew to a close, they packed up their equipment, each member feeling a sense of achievement and camaraderie. Their collaboration had not only deepened their strategic understanding, but also their mutual respect and friendship. Walking back to their dorms, Mark looked around at the group, a smile playing on his lips. This is more than just a study group now. We're a team, a damn good one at that. Jason grinned, feeling the weight of their accomplishments. Yeah, we are. Let's keep pushing, keep innovating. Who knows what we'll come up with next? As they said their goodnights, each member of the group felt invigorated, ready for whatever challenge came next, knowing they had each other's backs in the complex world of tactical strategy and beyond. As the semester progressed, the bonds within the group strengthened. Jason, Mark, Tharoke, Lucas, and Epley met regularly, not only for academic purposes but also for social gatherings, which helped them unwind and connect on a personal level. One evening, after a particularly grueling study session, the group decided to visit the Academy's observatory, a place known for its calming effect and a favorite among students seeking a quiet retreat. Seeing the cosmos like this really puts things into perspective, doesn't it? Jason remarked, gazing out at the starlit sky through the massive, transparent dome. Lucas, leaning against the railing next to him, nodded. Makes our daily worries seem pretty small, doesn't it? Tharoke joined them, his eyes reflecting the starlight. In my culture, the stars are guides. They lead warriors during the night and tell stories of the battles fought by our ancestors. That's fascinating, Mark said, joining the conversation. We have similar stories on Earth, constellations that hold myths and legends. Epley, usually more reserved, chimed in with a slight smile. Vixels believe the stars are the eyes of the universe, watching over us and keeping a record of our deeds. Their conversation flowed from cultural stories to personal aspirations, each member sharing dreams and hopes for the future. The night sky seemed to encourage more open and heartfelt discussions. As they spoke, Jason felt a sense of unity with his friends, a feeling that they were all part of something much larger than themselves or the Academy. Turning the conversation back to their studies, Mark suggested, "We've been handling these strategy simulations well, but I think we can push further. What about incorporating live exercises? Real-time scenarios with us acting as commanders on the ground?" Tharoke nodded enthusiastically. I like that. It adds a layer of unpredictability and real stress. Lucas pulled out his tablet and started making notes. We could use the combat training area. I'll talk to Professor Lyrene tomorrow, see if she can arrange something. Jason was impressed by the initiative. Great idea, Lucas. Let's all draft a proposal tonight. We'll meet tomorrow to polish it and present it together. Their conversation continued as they moved from the observatory to the nearby cafe, where they grabbed late-night snacks and drinks. They sketched out their ideas, each member adding thoughts on how to integrate various elements of psychological and physical challenges into the exercise. Epley suggested, we should also incorporate non-combat challenges to test our diplomatic and negotiation skills. Absolutely, Jason agreed. It's not all about fighting. The best strategists know how to avoid unnecessary conflict. As the night wound down, they finalized their proposal. It was a comprehensive plan that covered everything from logistical support to evaluative metrics. Who would have thought we'd end up here when we first met? Mark asked, a sense of wonder in his voice. True, Jason laughed. I didn't expect to find a second family here. The group packed up their things, ready to head back to their dorms. Before they split up, Tharoke put his hand in the center of the table, palm down. To the best team in the galaxy, he declared. One by one, the others placed their hands on top, a symbol of their solidarity. To the best team, they echoed. As they walked back, Jason felt a renewed vigor for the challenges ahead. With his team by his side, he was confident they could tackle anything the Academy, or the universe, threw at them. The night had not only deepened their bonds, but also reinvigorated their collective passion for their studies and their future careers. The proposal for live exercises was approved with enthusiasm by the faculty, much to the delight of Jason, Mark, Daroke, Lucas, and Epley. As the day of the exercise approached, they gathered in their usual meeting spot in the library to finalize the details. "Everyone clear on their roles for tomorrow?" Jason asked, looking around at his teammates. "Absolutely," Daroke replied. "I'll handle the field commands. I've incorporated some of the guerrilla tactics we discussed earlier." Mark was busy tweaking a digital map on his tablet. "I'm setting up the comms and surveillance. We'll need real-time data to make this work effectively." Lucas nodded in agreement. "I've arranged for some decoy units. We'll use them to test our enemies' reaction times and strategy adaptations." Epley, who had been quiet, spoke up. "I've programmed the drones for surveillance and environmental monitoring. They're ready to launch." The conversation shifted as they took a break, stepping outside into the Academy's gardens. As they walked, the discussion turned to the cultural differences in strategy and leadership. In Kravosian culture, Daroke began, leadership is about strength and honor. Decisions are made swiftly to demonstrate decisiveness. Mark laughed lightly. On Earth, it's often about charisma and persuasion. Leaders spend a lot of time justifying their decisions, trying to get everyone on board. Jason chimed in. And strategy? We tend to value adaptability, being able to change plans on the fly based on new information. Lucas thought for a moment. That's interesting. In my home system, strategy is more about long-term goals. We're taught patience and foresight. Every move is calculated to fit into a larger, often slower, strategic plan. Epley's small voice added, "Vixels prioritize survival and resource management. Our strategies often involve a lot of retreats and regrouping." Their talk highlighted how diverse their approaches were, and yet, how well they had managed to integrate these into a cohesive team effort. "Let's use some of these insights tomorrow," Jason suggested. "Mix up the leadership styles and strategic approaches. It could give us an edge." As they returned to their study room, the team set about incorporating elements of each culture's strategic strengths into their plan. The activity was not just about preparing for the exercise, but also a deeper learning experience about each other's backgrounds. The next day, the live exercise commenced. The campus's training ground was transformed into a battleground with holographic terrain and obstacles. Daroke led some of the maneuvers, employing his direct and honorable Kravosian tactics. Mark managed communications, ensuring that all teams were well-informed and coordinated. Lucas's strategic patience paid off when he directed a slow, steady encroachment on the enemy's position, while Epley's drones provided valuable data, allowing them to avoid traps and poorly defended areas. After several hours, the exercise concluded with their team achieving their objectives efficiently and effectively. The professors overseeing the event were impressed by the seamless integration of so many different tactical and leadership styles. "That was an incredible display of teamwork and cultural integration," Professor Lirine commented during the debriefing. "You've not only managed to succeed in the exercise, but also demonstrated a profound understanding of strategic diversity." Back in their meeting room, the group debriefed, discussing what had worked and what could be improved. "This exercise," Jason said, "showed us that our diversity is our greatest strength. We can adapt and overcome any challenge by learning from each other." The others nodded, their faces showing a mix of fatigue and satisfaction. "Let's keep this up," Mark added. "Not just for the Academy, but for wherever our careers might take us." Agreeing, the team felt a renewed sense of purpose and camaraderie, ready to face the rest of their academic challenges with the same enthusiasm and collaborative spirit. The final stretch of the semester had arrived, and the pressure was palpable. The Academy halls buzzed with students furiously studying, simulations running in every available space, and discussions about tactical theory filling the air. Jason, Mark, Daroke, Epley, and Lucas had built a reputation for themselves as one of the best study groups in the program, but with finals fast approaching, even they weren't immune to the stress. "All right," Jason said, gathering the group in their favorite corner of the library, surrounded by stacks of data pads and charts. Final simulations are coming up, and we need to be at the top of our game. Mark leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. I've been reading up on the theoretical side, but the scope of these finals is insane. We're expected to manage everything, from resource allocation to battlefield psychology, without any outside help, not to mention the time limits, Lucas added, scrolling through their syllabus on his tablet. We'll be evaluated on how quickly and efficiently we can make decisions. One mistake, and it could unravel the whole strategy. Tharoke crossed his arms, a determined look on his face. Then we just won't make any mistakes. Epley, though quiet as usual, raised a concern. It's not just about not making mistakes. The final simulation is designed to push us to our breaking point. They want to see how we function under intense pressure. Jason nodded in agreement. He's right. This is more than just strategy. It's about how we handle stress, adapt, and work together under extreme circumstances. The group knew they needed to prepare on multiple levels, both mentally and strategically. They decided to split their time between refining their strategies and practicing how they would manage the unpredictable elements of the final exam. For the next few days, they immersed themselves in their work. Jason led the group through various theoretical simulations, testing different strategies and making sure they could adjust on the fly. Tharoke drilled them on combat tactics, ensuring they all understood the Kravosian approach to swift and decisive action. Lucas refined their logistical planning, while Epley improved their technological support, upgrading the drones they used in the simulation to provide more real-time data. As the hours turned into days, the strain began to show. Tempers flared during particularly stressful sessions, and fatigue set in as they pushed themselves to the limit. During one particularly heated session, Tharoke slammed his fist on the table. We're overcomplicating this. We don't need to plan for every possible scenario. We need to trust our instincts. Mark, visibly frustrated, snapped back. It's easy for you to say, Tharoke. Your people thrive under this kind of pressure. But we need a plan. Several, in fact, if we're going to cover all our bases. Jason intervened, raising his hands to calm the situation. Both of you are right. We need strong plans, but we also need to trust each other and stay flexible. The finals are going to test both our preparation and our ability to adapt. Let's not forget why we're a strong team in the first place. Tharoke grumbled but nodded, and Mark sighed, clearly still tense but more composed. They returned to their work with renewed focus. As they continued to practice, Jason noticed that while their strategies were sound, the real strength came from their ability to rely on each other's skills. When Epley provided live data during their simulation runs, Mark could quickly adjust the communication strategies to keep everyone in sync. When Tharoke led their simulated forces with his usual decisiveness, Lucas supported with logistical reinforcements and resource management, ensuring they never ran out of supplies or manpower. Despite the stress and the occasional clash, Jason could see the team's unity strengthening. The way they worked together had become almost second nature, a seamless integration of strengths and talents. But even with this unity, Jason knew the final test would push them harder than they had ever been pushed before. The night before the finals, the group gathered one last time. The library was nearly empty, the soft glow of the overhead lights creating a quiet, focused atmosphere. They sat in a circle, each reviewing their notes and going over last-minute adjustments. Mark broke the silence. No matter what happens tomorrow, we've done everything we can to prepare. Tharoke grunted in agreement. Victory or failure, we face it together. Lucas smiled slightly. I have a good feeling about tomorrow. We've gone through every possible scenario. We're ready. Jason looked around at his friends, feeling a deep sense of pride. We are. And no matter what, we've already proven ourselves. The only thing left to do is to show the Academy what we're capable of. They sat in silence for a moment, absorbing the weight of the challenge ahead. Each of them had grown over the semester, not just as tacticians but as friends and teammates. Let's get some rest, Jason finally said, closing his datapad. Tomorrow is going to be the toughest day yet. As they left the library, Jason walked alongside Mark, both of them quiet. The gravity of the upcoming finals hung in the air, but Jason could feel a certain calm settling over him. Think we'll nail it? Mark asked, glancing sideways at him. Jason smiled slightly. I think we've got something special, Mark. Whatever happens, we're ready. Mark nodded, and they walked back to their dorms together, ready to face the final challenge. Tomorrow would be the ultimate test of everything they had learned, but Jason knew that no matter how difficult it was, they would face it together. The finals had come and gone, and now, the halls of the Galactic Academy buzzed with excitement. Graduation day had arrived. Jason, Mark, Tharoke, Lucas, and Eeply stood together, dressed in the Academy's formal robes, waiting for the ceremony to begin. Feels surreal, doesn't it? Mark said, adjusting his collar. All that work, all those sleepless nights, and now we're here. Jason nodded, smiling. Yeah, it's strange. I wasn't sure if I'd even make it past the first month, and now we're standing at the end. Tharoke crossed his arms, standing tall and proud. We've earned this. Every challenge, every simulation, none of it was wasted. Lucas, who always seemed to have a reflective comment, added, it's not just about what we've learned academically. I think the most important thing we'll take away is the bond we've formed. Jason glanced around at his friends, feeling the truth of Lucas's words. I agree. We wouldn't have made it this far without each other. Eeply, quieter than usual, spoke softly. I was so nervous when I first arrived here. I didn't know how I'd fit in. But you guys, you made me feel like I belonged. Mark clapped a hand on Eeply's shoulder. You belong, Eeply. This team wouldn't have been half as good without your tech skills. You saved our skins more times than I can count. As they laughed, the ceremony began. Names were called, students went on stage to accept their certifications, and the speeches were short but full of praise for the graduating class. When Jason's name was called, he walked across the stage, feeling the weight of the past year lift from his shoulders. He accepted his certification and looked out into the audience, spotting his friends cheering for him. After the ceremony, they gathered outside, taking in the moment. So, Jason said, what's next for everyone? Tharoke grinned. I'm going back to Kravos, where I'll be taking on a command role. But I expect to see you all again. Lucas nodded. I've been offered a position with the Academy's research division. I'll be around. Mark smirked. Earth's calling me back. They need more tacticians, and I've got some new tricks up my sleeve. Jason turned to Eeply. What about you, Eeply? I'm heading home for a bit, but after that, who knows? I want to explore more. Jason smiled at his friends, feeling a warmth settle over him. Whatever happens, this isn't goodbye. We'll keep in touch. We've been through too much together to just walk away. Tharoke extended his hand. To the best team in the galaxy. One by one, they all placed their hands on top of his, just like they had months ago. To the best team, they echoed, sealing their bond with the same camaraderie that had brought them this far. As they stood there, looking out at the stars that awaited them, Jason felt certain of one thing. No matter where they went, their paths would cross again.